Hello everybody, my name's Zahir and welcome to my channel Plants and Paints, where today we're going to be talking about the string of hearts. Before I get started on my video for today, firstly I want to apologise that last week I wasn't able to upload a video due to the tennis finals. My partner had actually got some tickets for us to go and watch the final, and due to the fact that that final game lasted so long, I wasn't able to get back home until quite late that evening. So unfortunately I wasn't able to make a video. Like I said, I do apologize about that. My plan is to make a video at least every week and give you something to view from my collection. So as I mentioned, today we're going to be talking about the string of hearts. So this is my string of hearts here. Up until about an hour ago, this was about 7 foot long. I actually have taken some cuttings off of this in preparation for today's video, so that hopefully, providing I get the time at the end of the video, I'm going to go over how to prepare cuttings as well. So let's get started on today's video. So the scientific name for this plant is Ceropegia Woodii. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. If I haven't, please feel free to correct me. But it's commonly known as the string of hearts. The reason it's known as the string of hearts is because of the beautiful heart-shaped leaves that are on the plant and the fact that they grow on a vine, hence the name string of hearts. So I'll just show you that again quickly. So I don't know if you can see them properly on there, but yeah, they grow as a vine, and all of the leaves on the vine are shaped as like hearts are shaped. It is also known as a rosary vine. Now, the reason it's known also as a rosary vine, although this is something I've learned through reading up information on the internet, is due to the fact that along the stems of the plant, at the nodes of the leaves and at the bases of the leaves, it actually forms these little tubers which resemble little potatoes. Now, the only reason I'm slightly aware of that is not due to the fact that I've got any on my vines, but I've got some in the bottom of my pot here. I'm going to see if this will focus into the video, but where my finger is here, I've got a couple there. There are some that are just showing through the top of the mud as well, but apparently they grow further down the vine as well. They grow along the vine, and due to the fact that they're shaped like little beads, it gets the name also as a rosary vine. So there are also other names that it's commonly known as. I'm not going to go over them because I seem to have found about 10 or 15 names, all sort of revolving around string of hearts, just put in different ways of stating a string of hearts, or rosary vine, just different ways of saying it. So I'm just going to leave it with those two names because they seem to be the main two popular names for this plant. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to talk a little bit about where this plant natively can be found. So this plant can be found growing natively in South Africa, Swaziland and Zimbabwe, and is a straggly evergreen plant which can be found clambering up through other types of vegetation. So you'll find it on rocky surfaces or growing up through other bushes, you know, climbing upwards. It actually is a vining plant that grows up rather than hangs down, although we do keep it as a hanging plant within the hobby. The string of hearts is commonly grown as a hanging plant, but due to the fact of its natural growth pattern, you can actually grow this in an upwards fashion by adding it to things like trellises or topiary frames or even moss poles. I was actually thinking to myself when I put moss poles on the list that, you know, a bunch of these wrapped around a moss pole, growing up a moss pole, would actually look really nice. I think it's something I'm going to attempt in the future when I attach some of my plants to a moss pole, like for instance my Alba variegata monstera, once it gets big enough and I attach it to a moss pole, I think I'm going to start putting string of hearts spiraling up around the moss pole, just to add a little extra effect to it and give something nice in the plant pot as well. So the leaves of the string of hearts grow 2 leaves directly opposite each other, and their internodes are quite evenly spaced out as new leaves are forming. Each leaf is generally about 1 to 2 centimeters in width and length. They're a dark green color with a marbling of silver across the top of the leaf. So I don't know if you can see it very properly in this here, but I will show you in a bit more detail when I go over the cuttings. But yeah, so they're a dark green leaf with a silver marbling over the top of the leaf, and on the underneath of the leaf they're like a light green to a purpley color. They are really quite attractive leaves. When I first started actually collecting on a serious scale of collecting plants, this was one of the plants I wanted to add to my collection quite early on, and it's due to the patterning on the leaves and the fact that, you know, they are heart shaped, which is you know, almost gimmicky if you like, but I do like a gimmick when it comes to the house plants. I don't know if you can hear my son giggling in the background there, watching his TV with his headphones in, but yeah. So the flowers themselves come in shades of white to pale magenta, with 5 purple petals forming at the top of the flower, and they fuse themselves together to form like a trap. I'm actually trying to untangle some of my cuttings which have got flowers on here so I can show you exactly what I'm talking about. So the interesting and quite distinctive inch-long flowers have a bulbous base and a tubular corolla in shades of white to pale magenta, with 5 purple petals which are fused together at the top, forming a cage or a trap. You could say that the flower even resembles like a flower vase itself. Now I'm gonna, hopefully I can get this in focus. I'm gonna bring this forward into the camera. So as I mentioned earlier, the flower at the top, if you can see it, there's like a purple petal cage around the top with 5 petals on it, and then it's the thin tube of the flower with the bulbous bottom on it. Now there's actually a reason this flower is shaped that way. They're very alien like looking flowers. I was quite shocked the first time I saw this plant actually flowering in my house, because I'd never actually looked up to see what the flowers would look like, because I wasn't sure whether this would actually flower in my care or not. But I think within the first couple of months it actually started flowering. Now the flowers themselves have a waxy coating and are internally lined with small downward pointing hairs. Now the reason for this is that they will trap small flies which are attracted to the scent. So the flies will climb in through the top of the flower. Let me pull the flower back up again. So they'll climb in through the top of the flower, and it really is going to be small flies. They'll climb in due to the fact they've been attracted by the scent, and as they go down into the flower itself has got downward facing hairs in there, so the fly actually gets trapped in there. Although the plant isn't trapping the insect to actually eat it or anything like that, it's more to spread its pollen. So what will actually happen once the fly is trapped in there is those hairs will start to wilt, and the pollen on those hairs will then become mature. So the flower itself matures, and then the fly is able to escape, and as it's escaping it collects all this pollen from the flower, and what it'll actually do is it will exit this flower, and due to the fact that they're a glutton for punishment, they'll go from one flower to the next, and they'll actually spread that pollen from the first flower onto the second flower, helping that plant to seed and produce new growth. So Due to the plant being a succulent type of plant, it requires excellent drainage soil. So myself, I've used cactus and orchid bark potting mix with a little bit of perlite towards the bottom, just to make sure I've got a very well draining substrate in there. So they will tolerate very dry soil. So this is the kind of plant you can get away with leaving it for extended periods of time without watering the plant, due to the fact that it lives like a succulent. The leaves themselves will retain moisture. They will actually swell up when you actually do water them to gather any moisture, but they won't tolerate being in a soggy environment. You'll actually kill the plant off very quickly. There are lots of people's stories that I've read on Instagram and on the internet where they've not had great luck with these plants, but due to the fact I did a bit of research before I actually got my plant the first time, I've fingers crossed I've had no issues so far. So main thing is make sure you've got a very free draining potting medium to go with your string of hearts. And the ideal potting medium, as I mentioned earlier, would be anything containing coarse sand, a bit of perlite and other large textured medium. So things, as I mentioned earlier, such as a cactus potting mix, orchid bark potting mix, and things like perlite or even rocks in there to help make sure that it drains very freely is very important that you do that. As far as watering my plant goes, as per usual, I use filtered water for all of my plants, but I don't water this plant very often. I probably water this plant every 3 to 4 weeks, and that's even in the hot temperatures that we're having at the moment. And as you can see, my plant is actually doing very well. I've got a nice vine going on with plenty of new growth constantly occurring, and like I said, mine got up to 7 foot in length, and today I've actually had to trim it down due to the fact that it's actually now touching the floor. I'm just trying to untangle these cuttings that I've got here. Okay, so I've gone over your potting mix. Fertilizer, I would suggest fertilizing this plant the once a month that you water it. So add fertilizer at about quarter of the rate that it recommends on the bottle. A general houseplant fertilizer will work well with this. I've been using my general houseplant fertilizer for this, and I've been fertilizing it at about quarter strength once a month. And because it's such free draining soil, it doesn't retain any extra fertilizer in the soil, that it doesn't actually need any excess water. It drains out of this immediately. You know, it will just wet the soil and there will be no extra water other than what has actually wet the potting medium itself. So that's fertilizer and potting mix covered. This plant generally isn't fussy. You can keep it in quite a bright lighting condition. I have it hanging in my window, although I have heard people saying that you shouldn't keep it in a bright location. I keep mine in a north facing window, but I keep it up in my window, so it's not exactly in shade, it's pretty much in sunlight all the time. And as I've shown you several times now, my vines are doing really well. They don't seem to be minding the sun, and we're sort of in the middle of summer at the moment, so you know, I would suggest that they don't particularly mind light at all. Providing you're not putting them in like a south facing window, I would imagine that might bug them a little bit. So north facing window, you can actually have them hanging in the window, and as mine have proven, they should be fine. Watering, so as I mentioned earlier, just water once a month, every 3 weeks to once a month. You'll notice when the plant needs watering because the leaves will go really thin, and the purple coloration of the leaves, I don't know if this will happen to everybody, but It seems to happen to me with my plant. The purple coloration seems to go to a light magenta color when it's suggesting that it needs water. I just base my watering on that. I've watered it quite recently, so I can't actually give you an example of that, unfortunately. But yeah, the bottom of the leaves, they turn quite really light pink rather than staying quite a dark purple color when generally when it needs watering, and the leaves will go very wafer thin. So I think I've pretty much covered everything as far as the plant maintenance is concerned there. I have changed the way that I do my videos slightly today. Instead of breaking everything up into individual sections, I've kind of sorry, I've kind of tried to keep everything contained into one speech, so one paragraph if you like, and give you as much information as possible. Hopefully you've not found that to be something that you haven't enjoyed in my video. I hope that it's something that has been for the better. The main reason I did it, as I said, is usually within my videos I get to 28 minutes before I even know it and I've run out of time, and some of my videos have cut off before I've had an actual full opportunity to say bye and say thank you for tuning in and so on and so forth. And I needed to make sure that I leave enough space today to go over the cuttings of this plant with you. So making cuttings, potting them on, and the procedure that I'm gonna do to help you perform this yourself at home as well. So like I mentioned earlier, this plant grows quite vigorously, so you're gonna possibly, depending on how you keep your plant at home, I've heard of some people wrapping it around their curtain rails or even taking it over their TV and things like that, so winding it around the room as far as they can get it. But you know, generally myself, where I keep it, it got to a stage where it was touching the floor, so today was a perfect opportunity due to the fact that the votes for the video ended up winning for the string of hearts for me to actually take those cuttings and trim the plant down. So what I'm actually going to do now is I'm going to go over some of the details of how to take the cuttings, and I've actually got a bunch of what I'm going to actually be taking cuttings from here, so you're going to see me fiddling about a little bit because they are a bit intertwined. So you'll have to excuse me while I do that, and I will try and keep talking throughout just so that I can give you as much information as possible as to what I'm actually going to be doing. So this is the cutting that I've taken, and pretty much they're all the same. A lot of my cuttings actually contain flowers, which I was a little bit disappointed about, I must say, because I didn't want to have to cut the flowers off the plant because they're all at the section where I actually took the cuttings from, so I don't have any actually left on the plant. So hopefully more will grow soon. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you a quick close-up of the cutting that I've taken so you can see actually where I've cut it from. So I've cut it just below where the leaves are growing from, and the sections where the leaves grow out of are your nodes. So that is where you're actually going to get your roots growing from. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just trim this down just slightly above the leaves, and then I'm going to chop the actual leaves off. So I'm going to chop them off from here and from here. So what you're left with is something that looks like that. So what that actually is ready now to be planted, ready to start rooting. And what I'm actually doing is I'm water propagating my plants. So I've just got a little water vessel here with some filtered water in it, and what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to trim another set of those leaves off, just so I've got 2 points where the plant can actually root from, because I'm going to be planting these down about so deep into the soil. So the more root area that we have, the better chance it will have of surviving after transplanting it. I know this is quite a long cutting. Generally you can cut this again, but some of these cuttings I'm going to keep to make myself an extra string of hearts, but the rest of them I'm actually going to hand out to family and friends. I might even do a little giveaway on my Instagram once they've rooted, and give people the opportunity to actually win some of my string of hearts as well. So I'm going to take the next string out and I'm going to just repeat the same thing again. So starting from the top, we're going to take a cutting just above the leaves, and then we're going to trim the leaves themselves off, leaving a little bit of the stem on there. And this is at the node here, this is where the actual roots are going to grow from. So at the node right here. And I'm going to do the same again. Like I said, I'm going to give it as much opportunity to root as many roots as possible. So I'm going to actually chop this one down a bit as well. So I'm going to cut this one in half just so I can make two cuttings out of this, just to show you exactly what I'm talking about. So this one here is the one I've already taken my cuttings off, so that's going to go straight into the water there. That one's ready to go. And now this one, just repeating the same process, so chopping off the leaves and chopping off the second set of leaves. As you can see on this one, it's actually got some flowers on the bottom, and the leaves are not very mature on these, so they weren't very big either, but yeah, it's got some flowers on there. I'm imagining they might die off, I'm not quite sure, because it's the first time I've actually taken cuttings off of this plant. So I'm just going to repeat that process throughout. I might go quiet for a little bit now while I do that, but I will keep continuing to show you exactly what I'm doing. They are really tangled. Some of these are really quite long. Okay, so that one there, let's cut that off there, let's cut that there. Put that into the water vessel. I will show you the water vessel at the end as well, just to show you how many cuttings I've actually managed to fit in there, because I've got a ton of cuttings that I've taken off of the plant here, which I plan on actually planting up. So, oh, I've got one of the little potato things growing on this vine here in between the leaves. I don't know if you can see it there, but there's the beginning of one of these little potatoes that I mentioned earlier. So I'm not going to chop them leaves anymore. I'm just going to leave that in there. Oh, that's shocking. I didn't actually think I had any on the plant, but I've been proven wrong. That's brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant. I'm definitely keeping that one for myself. So here again, just cutting off the leaves at the nodes and trimming off a bit, just so that it's got like a centimetre above the node where I've trimmed it away, and then take a second cutting from here. So definitely that one is too long, into the water, and then trim the leaves again. Oh, I've got potatoes on here as well. Oh gosh, I actually didn't notice that. I seem to have a hell of a lot of potatoes growing on these string of vines. Well, potato looking tubers, well, the beginning of them anyway. I guess that goes to show that my plant is actually very, very happy, which I'm very pleased about. So I'm going to chop this one in half. I'm going to chop the leaves, get rid of those. Again, just show you what I've done there. So I've got the node with the leaves trimmed off with a little bit of the stem left on, and then where the node comes out from the stem comes out from the node, I've left about a centimetre on there, just to make sure that there are, you know, at least 3 places where that plant can root from. And same again with this one. I'm not going to trim that down any further. It's got a few flowers on there, hopefully they'll stay alive. Trim that off from there and from there. Trim these 2 little leaves off. They're the tiniest little leaves. It's just all new growth on here. Okay, it's been a bit of a different video today, because as I mentioned in the vote that I did for the string of hearts, that I would do cuttings on there. I hope you've enjoyed my video today. It's been a pleasure making it, and like I said, I do apologize for not being able to make a video last week. It was due to the fact that I had to go and watch the tennis. I am a tennis fan. I've liked tennis since I was a kid, and the opportunity to go and watch the finals was absolutely brilliant. So I hope you've enjoyed my video today. If you have, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment in the comment box. If you haven't subscribed already, then please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I generally upload content on a weekly basis. My content is based on the votes that I put up on Instagram for plants that people want to learn something about. Today was something a bit different for me, a new approach to actually making my video, because I've never done cuttings on a video before. I hope that it's not been too much of a change from the norm, because I know people do like my videos due to the fact that I generally am talking mainly about the plant itself and giving a lot of information about its origins and care and maintenance and so on and so forth. But as I mentioned, I hope it wasn't too much of a change for you. This is the cuttings that I've taken. I'm going to leave them in here. They should take 3 to 4 weeks to root. After they've rooted, I'll give you a little update. I'll probably post some pictures on my Instagram account just to show you how well they're rooting, and then from there I'm going to start potting them up and handing a few out to some family and friends. And also possibly I'm going to do like a giveaway on Instagram as well, because this is just like a handful of the cuttings that I've actually got here that I need to do. So I'm going to thank you all for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed my video. As I said, if you have, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to my channel already, then please make sure to subscribe. I look forward to making next week's video for you, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care. Bye bye.